Thank you very much, George. I'm very excited to be here. John Constantini, the chair of Building EQ, was supposed to do this, but unfortunately his day job took over. So I'm subbing for him, and hopefully we'll give you some insight. So Building EQ has transformed. Building EQ used to be called BEQ, and the name was changed to Building EQ. And it's really developed over the years. It's developed from spreadsheets to now a portal. So Building EQ is really the first product of ASHRAE where the tool is the web. And what we've really tried to do with Building EQ in its current form is to concentrate on alignment with ASHRAE standards. So 90.1, the energy standard, standard 100, energy efficiency in existing buildings, and standard 211, commercial energy audits, to name some. Next slide, please.
So it just takes some time.
No problem. And I do apologize. I don't know what's going on. I'm on GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar all the time, but today my computer doesn't want to cooperate, so I apologize for that.
Don't worry about it. Okay.
So we've already said it's a web-based portal. So what it does is we calculate building EUI, energy use intensity, based on the climate zone. We benchmark energy performance. We are not an energy modeling tool. You would still do your energy modeling on Building EQ, and it assists with an ASHRAE Level 1 energy audit. It generates building energy performance scores and provides data to improve energy performance. If you are on the ashrae.org/buildingeq website, we've added a lot of tools on there to try and make it easy for everybody. And this includes, there's a YouTube video that's about 2 minutes long that shows you a walkthrough of the site. Hugh Carruthers, who I know a lot of people know, actually put 4 short videos together for us, podcasts, on what is Building EQ, portal tour, the level 1 energy audits, and universities. The other thing that's on there is Seminar 42 from Orlando. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but basically this was something where we had ASHRAE members supervising students from Florida Institute of Technology and Brevard County Schools, and basically hearing how this all works. So we're giving students real live HVAC experience. They're learning. There's chapter members who are the engineers supervising them. We're working with faculty and the facilities people. So to me, it's a win-win situation. The other thing you'll find on there is frequently asked questions, features and user tips, PDFs of the report. You'll also find a demo of the portal. So it's actually the person that's hosted, Stephen Roth, walks people through how to do the portal. And I think, the big thing with Building EQ is what we're trying to do here is make buildings better. And as everybody is driving to net zero energy, total decarbonization, I think it's an important tool that's out there to be able to do that. Next slide, please. So if we take a look at other reporting energy programs that are out there, in North America, there's the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is a benchmark, which will just give you a score. And the corollary to that is the DOE Building Energy Asset Score. There are some others in terms of energy reporting that are more broader, such as LEED, Green Globes, and BOMA 360. So energy is part of it, but there's a lot more. And what Building EQ is specifically looking at is just the energy part. And there's mandatory state and local benchmarking, labeling, and disclosure programs around the globe. Next slide. So how does BuildingEQ compare? So you'll see the three topics: benchmarking, energy audit, and asset rating. BuildingEQ handles all three. Portfolio manager is just benchmarking. The asset score is just your asset rating. ASHRAE Standard 211 is both benchmarking and the energy audit, and ISO 5002, which I know a lot of the European folks are familiar with, will handle both benchmarking and energy audit. Next slide, please. So what we found is there's global labeling efforts, and you'll see we have Greece there on the far right, but just gives you some samples of what other people are doing in terms of giving labels to buildings so that people can see exactly how well buildings are performing. With the existing building stock being mostly already buildings that exist, it's crucial that we're going to be able to refine those to be able to make them more energy efficient than what they are. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an indication of North America. And you can see here that there's a lot of things that are mandatory and there's some that are voluntary. I can tell you in my own home province of Ontario, large buildings must report both their energy and their water use. So that's buildings over 50,000 square feet on an annual basis. And then what they do is they post all the collective data from the previous year so you can see how you compare to other buildings. And that's happening, you know, all over and more. So I encourage you to go to the buildingrating.org/jurisdictions website. You can see there. It'll give you an indication of what's going on. If we go to the next slide. The next slide shows you can see Europe all there having mandatory policy, China, Australia, and some others, but it gives you an indication of what's there. And like I said, that website will give you an indication of municipalities, provinces, territories, whatever it happens to be, that where this is required. Next slide. So if we look at programs and policies with BuildingEQ, universities are using BuildingEQ to improve campus buildings and provide students with hands-on experience. As I mentioned, that one seminar we did in Orlando is good with that. The University of Nebraska and Tim Wentz has done a sustainability study, and their intent is to have every building use a BuildingEQ rating and using the energy efficiency measures that are going to come out of that to help improve those buildings. So we're definitely seeing an uptake there on campuses. You'll see next that the state of Florida has recognized BuildingEQ as a qualified energy rating option for all buildings. And Orlando, Florida has an ordinance that includes BuildingEQ and Standard 211 for completion of a level 1 energy audit. This is an opportunity for any of the government affairs folks to see if Standard 211 can either be, you know, the basis of legislation or an alternate path to be able to recognize that ASHRAE does have it. And I think the big thing with BuildingEQ is it is powered by ASHRAE. So it's something that you definitely want to make sure that is specified, that it's ASHRAE here that's talking. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the unique things, I guess, about BuildingEQ is anyone can get a score. So anyone can get a score. It's free for anybody to go on the website, input your data, and get that done. Now you're probably asking, okay, how long is it going to take to import data or to put the data into the portal? Typically, it would be 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how complex the building is and assuming you have all the information in front of you. One of the things we've done with this portal is we've tried to make it as flexible as possible. So if you are using Portfolio Manager, you can actually import the data from that directly into BuildingEQ. We've built that in. We've also developed BuildingEQ that it can be very flexible. So that if people wanted to customize this, they wanted their company name or utility or whatever it is, that's something that can be done. You just have to let us know, and that's something we can work with. Credentialed users can submit for an official rating. The benchmarks are aligned for the fixed baseline with standard 90.1. And I think that's adds some definitely credibility in the industry to say that, you know, we are aligned with ASHRAE standards. We offer this two ways, both in operation and as design. In operation is based on actual energy use, and that really resonates with the bean counters of the world because you're using real data and they can see exactly what we're doing. The as designed is based on a standard.
Doug, there is a problem with your sound. We cannot hear you anymore.
Doug, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay,
Thank
yes,
you.
okay.
Okay. So next slide, please. Did you hear everything on the BuildingEQ summary, or was it did it get cut off mid-sentence?
I think we stopped in when we are trying to say to the point that when you're saying about the in-operation assessment. So if you want me to go back one slide,
assessment.
But yes, I think you are okay. You want me to go back one slide, or
okay.
You're okay with that?
No, it's only, I don't know how much when you said you couldn't hear me, how much more of that
it was exactly when you stopped saying about benchmarks using standard 90.1. This is when we lost you in the previous slide.
Okay, so I'll just go back and cover the last 2 points then. If you can just go back one. So it should say building, yeah, that's it. So the in operation is based on actual energy use. So that really resonates with the bean counters because they can see exactly what's happening in terms of energy use in the building. The as design is based on a standardized model. We actually use ComNet, and it gives you additional information for decision makers. Next slide, please. So the two ones being used are in operation and as designed. So we'll take a look at in operation. So we're using metered energy bills for energy use. The building has to be in operation for a year before you can get an in operation assessment. So you have those energy uses. And part of that assessment is because you're going through this with the people on site and doing a walkthrough, you're actually talking to the facilities people, seeing what's going on, how the building is being used. It gives people a better reflection of exactly what's going on. And it's definitely the most common application that we see with the tool being used. What we've done with the rating scale is we've tried to make this very simple. 0 stands for net zero energy, and 200, the other end of the scale, is a very energy inefficient building, with 100 being a average or median building. It allows for tracking of improvement and compares building to itself over time. So next slide, please. So you're really looking at how good is my building, you know, what have we learned about the building, that we can get the data into the portal, get our score. Once you get the score, if you want to label, that's something you can do. But I think the key thing is you want to start the dialogue with the owner on how you can improve the building score. Starting that conversation is the key. Next slide, please. Okay, the as designed assessment. So this is evaluating potential energy use. We're using the standardized model, as I said, so it's independent of building occupancy and rating conditions. If you look on the right-hand side here, you can see what the actual building label looks like. And I like this one because it'll actually show you what the as designed is and what the in operation is. I think everybody would probably agree that, you know, buildings are designed, but they're not always operated the way that they're designed. So this gives you a good indication in this case that it was designed showing a rating of 45, but in reality it was a 50, so slightly less efficient than what was designed. And I think that's a good thing, a good reference to have. Next slide, please. So as designed could be people want to buy a building. You're still doing the same thing. You still have to do a walkthrough to verify what's been there. You're entering data into the portal. But if you had, say, a 24/7 call center, with as designed, you're going to get, because it's a normalized rating, you'll actually get a better rating on that. But I think the other thing to look at, when we move to the next slide, is that you do have the option of looking at different design options. So when you're designing a building, you can look at this and say, if we make this change or add these additional features, what it's going to do to my score. And the as designed rating, like I said, is for a building you're either designing or has been in operation for less than 12 months. And you can see, based on the assets, exactly where that sits. Next slide, please. So let's take a look. On the right there, you'll see what the actual login looks like for the BuildingEQ portal. As we said, it's online and anybody can use it and get a score. Only credentialed users can submit a project for ASHRAE approval, and then reports are available, and we will go through that. So for the next slide, please. Okay, baseline calculations align with the 2003 Energy Star Portfolio Manager when the building type allows. All the other baselines align with standard 211. So again, we've tried to align this so that we are aligned with ASHRAE standards, but the baselines are adjusted by climate zone. So it doesn't matter where the building is, you can compare what you are based on your climate zone, and very much internationally that works. One of the interesting features is this thing called Building Sync. Building Sync is a schema that's being used to allow data transfer between applications. Right now, Stephen Roth, who is our provider for the portal, is actually doing a grant from the Department of Energy in the US to see how we can better align. Building Sync works with BuildingEQ, and we're one of the few platforms that it does work with to make it better. And now the second phase is coming out. So we're really hoping that that's going to give BuildingEQ a step up on the way things are. Next slide, please. So I said when the portal was designed, we really tried to make this easy. So you can manage your projects by account, by portfolio, by campus. You can have project data in one location. You can dictate, you know, who can input data, who's responsible for what. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do. One of the key things is you can be working on it and then return at a later time. You can create the default building and copy to a new project. So it helps if people are doing repetitive work on stuff to be able to do it, or if you want to make a change, say in the as design, and see what the differences are. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project options. It is available in both Imperial and SI units. Currently, we have English, French, and Spanish languages in the portal, and I will say it was all ASHRAE members that did the translation on that. The only costs were to make that, to put the information into the portal. So all countries, all climate zones are in there, and you can have specific currency. So be it euro, be it dollars, be it, you know, whatever the local currency is. If something is not in there, that's something that can be added into the portal as needed. Next slide, please. So on this, you have main tabs on the portal, and that's an actual screenshot of the portal on the right-hand side. So building characteristics, you're going to put in, you know, what all the information is on that, the energy. The one thing that we have in there that I think is important is there is an IEQ screening feature on BuildingEQ. So we are taking into account indoor environmental quality, the energy efficiency measures, and then photos and attachments. You can go through and add, you know, something, or if you discover something during a walkthrough that a valve is open or a damper is stuck, you can take that photo and you can attach it to the report or a picture of the building. Next slide, please. Under each tab is what's called an accordion. And under there, you're going to have different inputs that are going to be adjusted based on your building type. You will answer questions that are related just to your specific building type. What I will tell you is BuildingEQ does have more building types than what is in Portfolio Manager now. So we are really trying to make sure that we're trying to cover as many of the options as possible. Next slide, please. One of the nice features I think that's in BuildingEQ is the help. Wherever you see a question mark, you can click on that and you'll see an example there of a help screen to tell you, you know, what is it that they're asking here, or give you a suggestion as to what's going on. And then we've tried to make this as simple as possible. Your errors will show up as either red, yellow, or green. Red means that there's definitely an error. You got to fix it before you can proceed. Warning is saying this data is outside the normal realm of what we've seen. We'd like you to double check that. You can still enter it, but we're just giving you a warning that it's outside of what normally is being seen. And green, you're good to go. Next slide, please. Okay, we've talked about extensive building types, but I think the one thing that is key with BuildingEQ is we've tried to do it for multiple use. So let's say you have a building that has retail maybe on the ground level, you have some office, and then maybe some residential above. That's something that can be accommodated within the portal. So I think that's a great feature to have. The other thing that's in there is labs. We've taken Labs 21, which has the most detailed lab data, and put that in. And that's why a lot of the universities and colleges like it, because they have labs on there to be able to get the true feel for what's going on in terms of energy use based on the type of lab that they have. Next slide, please. So reports. This gives you a list of the reports, the user input report, the label report, which you've seen. The disclosure report is $50. The spreadsheet audit report is $50, and the narrative audit report, which is a Word document, is $200. We'll take a look at those now so you can see what we're talking about. Next slide, please. So there's your label report. And again, this is free for credentialed users. You can see the score. You can get a plaque if necessary. Next slide, please. The performance score, again, is based on actual cost if it's in operation, standardized model, and it's showing you where you stand in terms of that. Next slide, please. The disclosure report gives you key energy information. So it's used a lot of times with real estate transactions. or disclosure ordinances. And again, that's just a sample of the report. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we've really tried to align this with Standard 211, and it is very close to what's going on with Standard 211. And you'll get an understanding of how the building ranks against similar buildings. So I think that's a key takeaway of this is the alignment we're trying to do with Standard 211 and Level 1 energy audits. Next slide, please. Standard 211, you'll see a picture of it there, is normative language for energy audits, and it's a consistent approach to energy audits. I know that the ISO 5002 and the EN 16247 clearly spell out things. ASHRAE 211 is the same thing. It's a consistent approach to energy audits. We raise and maintain the bars. It gives you what the possible areas for improvement are in terms of energy efficiency measures, and to start that conversation with the owner. Next slide, please. Again, some of the forms that you get with there, and you do get responsive screens so you can select data on that. I did give George a copy of the Excel spreadsheet for Standard 211. So that is something that's there, and it automatically populates the Standard 211 spreadsheets from BuildingEQ. And the extensive level of the energy efficiency measures are a pull-down menu that's already built into the program. Next slide, please. The narrative audit report, there's a lot of information. You're getting a lot of stuff that's coming back from this. It is in Word, so it can be customizable to include, say, your company name or whatever other information you need. And you're getting that consistent reporting. There's a lot of good information in here so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel for your customer, and the cost on that is $200. Next slide, please. So credentialed users, what is a credentialed user? If you're a professional engineer in your jurisdiction, so that would include, anybody in Greece, anybody in Europe, chartered engineer, professional engineer in the US or Canada. And the one thing is also ASHRAE certified provider. So you can be a BEP or a BEMP, an energy assessment professional or an energy modeling professional. And one thing the committee just voted on to add, and again, this is in alignment with Standard 211, is to add AEE certified energy auditors, certified energy manager, and the energy management professional. So look for more information on that, because that was just approved at a meeting we had about a week and a half ago. Next slide, please. I am happy to announce that we have created an Energy Genius Award. We want to recognize excellence in the assessment of building energy performance. So people using the BuildingEQ, once you've submitted a project, you'll be eligible, and it'll be evaluated, based on how complex the building is, what the design improvement is, did you involve students, the use of ASHRAE resources. So look for more details coming soon. Next slide, please. So just to sort of wrap up here, BuildingEQ is a benchmarking assessment and auditing tool. It performs both in operation and as designed, aligns with ASHRAE Standard 211. We can make bad buildings good and good buildings great. We have that consistency of benchmarking and audit formats from a group of contractors. It's very flexible for managing large portfolios, and we're comparing buildings via the climate zone rather than national boundaries. Just a quick thing, just to give you some idea of what the committee is looking at now, is we're looking at the performance rating method for ASHRAE 90.1 to bring that in for the as design. We're working with TC99 data centers to come up with some commonality on what can be used there. Looking at system level KPIs, which seems to be a big thing these days. Digital twins, and lastly, the ASHRAE headquarters building. We've got a few issues with the model we've been given to try and get a rating, but the thing is to get an as design rating for the ASHRAE building, and then we do an in operation when it's been in. as you probably know, they're adding photovoltaics, I think, as we speak. So when that's all done, that would have to be reassessed, et cetera. So next slide. With that, I would say check it out. If you haven't looked at it, go to ASHRAE.org/BuildingEQ. And next slide, I guess we're saving questions till the open forum at the end, which is fine. It's been my pleasure to present, and I look forward to hearing what the other speakers have to say. Thank you very much.